Hello, welcome back to Global War 1939. We just finished off round five. So let's take a look at some of the actions that each country has taken. So for the Germans, they did go in and invade Russia. So Operation Barbarossa is underway. They did take out the rest of Poland, the Baltic states, and southern Russia itself. Their main battle group is currently in western Ukraine, which consists of close to 30 infantry, 3 SS infantry, 6 SS mechanized, 2 regular mechanized, 3 heavy artillery, 12 artillery, 10 medium tanks, and 6 Mark IVs. What will be joining them would be 2 Mark Vs, 2 more Mark IVs, 3 more medium tanks, a couple of artillery, and a handful of infantry. So their plan is to engage the Russian battle group in Olar-Kursk and then into Moscow. The troops here in the center, they probably won't advance until this battle group and that city is secure under German control. As for France, they're very lightly garrisoned compared to the east. They got about 10 infantry or so, 2 SS mechanized, and 2 light tanks. So they'll probably have to spend a turn. This next buy is probably going to be focused on the Western Front to defend France, more likely. Now, they do have their entirety of their Air Force, so they're going to have to utilize that to take off or remove the Allies, which consists of 6 tanks, medium, handful of infantry, and a couple of artillery. So their Air Force, 2 medium bombers, 4 tacticals, and 5 veterans. So they're going to use that Air Force as is really not needed, not yet, to Russia. They will use it to fight off Moscow. So that's their plan for right now. We'll see how that works out. Now, if they don't attack, that just gives the Allies more time to build up a stronger force in France. As for the Italians, they did go ahead and attack Cairo. As you can tell, it was a disaster for the Italians. They severely got their die rolls were not in their favor. They didn't score their first hit against the British until round 3 of the combat. So they got severely slaughtered. They fought really much until their last army piece. They pulled out with only their Air Force. So things are not looking good for the Italians in Africa at this point, as the only land-based units they have left are 2 infantry and a heavy artillery that they didn't get until that buy. French Foreign Legion here in Africa are finally starting to make their way over, taking money away from the Italians and putting more pressure on the opposite side. So they're fighting a 2-front war here now. As for the rest of Africa, the British, after this battle, they are quite low on units. So they're going to get as many units in South Africa as possible and rebuild their army up in Cairo. More likely, these 3 tanks and that fighter will attack this Air Force. Win or lose, the goal is to remove as many air pieces as possible, severely weakening their Italians' combat or offensive capabilities. They did have 2 destroyers here. They decided to attack this German fleet that was blockading them, thinking that the German subs on attack with 2 or more, they attack on a 5, but they only defend on a 2. So again, the goal wasn't to win. The goal was to sink as many ships as possible before their two destroyers got taken out. So that's exactly what happened. The 2 hits for 2. So the Germans lost 2 U-boats, and the British lost their 2 destroyers. Now, these will go in here and sink these 2 transports on the German next turn. But it still doesn't get rid of the 8 transport bonus, as they have 8 here, and Anzac has a transport as well. So they're still over the 8 that they require for that bonus. All right. So for the Atlantic Allies, Canada purchased another transport, another infantry, and they're going to take the Canadians over into France as well, providing that these units are still here. They probably will still make, even if the Germans do manage to remove this, they will probably make another attack. The Americans are fully in the war right now, so they're going to start that chuck back and forth. They're going to peel off 2 transports down to Brazil to activate them, get themselves a couple more soldiers and a few more dollars to add. They did activate Mexico as well. So they spent their last buy was mostly in transports, as they were greatly behind the British in that capability. So they had to spend a turn to catch up. So most of their buy went into transports, with a few Marines and a heavy artillery as well. So all these units will be transferred over to France. And then they're just going to focus, now that the transports are up and running, they're going to focus on getting army equipment, tanks, infantry, artillery over to France. So the strategy these guys are going to adopt will be Germany first, as the pre-war budget was mostly in the Pacific, and that was mostly to keep the Japanese Navy in check. So they're going to spend the next couple turns investing heavily into the Atlantic and going after the Germans. For the Pacific, FEC did retake this one territory. And outside of that, they just did a buy. They're still waiting on Iraq to flip over to a pro-allied. So that's going to happen soon enough. Give them a few more dollars. Also give them this bonus, as this bonus is shared between Allies and Axis. So they'll make even more money, right? For the Japanese and China, they just went on a steamroll. They tagged 4 more territories belonging to China. China is just left with these 3 territories here and these 2 blank ones. So obviously Japan will capture these 2 and put as much pressure on this set of infantry and artillery here. So the Chinese should be out of the war after this next turn coming up, leaving only FEC in the Asian mainland. After their battle with the FEC here, the Japanese did take bombardment hit, or their capital ships, their battleships did take a few hits, so they had to go to a port to repair. So that's all done. This fleet here, which is essentially their starting fleet that they started the game with, is going to start making its way over to Guam area, and they'll probably have a standoff between the Japanese and the Americans, and baiting which country will attack which one first. For their buy, they focused on destroyers. That's because the cruiser destroyer fleet the Japanese had here to keep the Anzac fleet in check, they both clashed, And a disaster again for the Japanese. They lost all their destroyers. They went in with a superior force. They had higher numbers. Didn't work out as the Anzacs fought bravely. So the Japanese did win the initial engagement, leaving themselves with only one cruiser. So all the destroyers, subs that had there was gone. And then the Anzac responded on their turn to sink the last cruiser. So right now, Japan is strong in capital ships, but they're weak in support vessels. So they have a carrier here, Anamato, another battleship. They spent pretty much all their money on support, a couple destroyers, some more land-based units, another cruiser. So they didn't buy another Amato this turn. And then this is the Navy that's down by FEC going to make its way over. 2 battleships, 2 carriers, 2 escort carriers, 4 cruisers, 3 destroyers. So more likely these fleets will amalgamate together and have a standoff with the American fleet, which is very similar in strength. Right? So the Americans would probably like another couple destroyers, another battleship, possibly another aircraft carrier. Right now, both countries are tied with 3 each. So, all right. And Anzac did purchase another transport, as the Japanese are now. Most of their focus is going to be with the Americans, so hopefully that'll give them some free reign to come over. If anything, it'll be just a distraction, as they'll have to send some sea vessels down to protect these islands. So the plan for the Italians was to take these units, help defend France, take out Gibraltar, but they're going to have to be reutilized in a second attempt against Cairo. So we'll see how that works out. By the time the transports get back to Italy and back to Cairo, it will be a few turns have gone by. So I can see both countries pursuing another build-up before each one engages. All right. Well, thank you for watching and have a great day.